welcome back to the 938 podcast. Glad that you're joining us today here, coming to you from the mission office, and excited. Got a really cool conversation for you to kind of jump in on today. But as we get started, I want to encourage you, if you haven't gone and clicked like and subscribe to this video, I want to encourage you to do that and then share this across all of your social media platforms, and that we greatly appreciate that for sure. And so today we're going to go back and talk about something that's kind of been going on in our world, that's been a major I'll say source of news and things going on, especially in Europe, but really around the world. And we have Jon Konnerup with us, our mission director today, and excited for you to be with us today, talking about Romania, Ukraine, talking about updates from the Ukrainian refugee situation.
Yes.
And just thanks for being here today.
Oh yeah, always enjoy being on these podcasts and just sharing what's going on around the world.
Yeah.
And just opportunities, but also needs and what our missionaries are dealing with.
Yeah, and there's no shortage of things to talk about. That's for sure, right?
That's right.
There's always things to talk about.
That's right.
You know, I was actually at church last night and kicking off a mission conference, and they showed the Everywhere to Everywhere video. Yeah. And just once again, it just hit me. I'm just reminded once again that we are part of a really huge movement around the world.
Yes.
And I think sometimes it's easy to get isolated in that. But it's really cool to think about the number of churches outside the America, over 21,000 churches,
right?
Seeing people saved and everything that's going on. And that doesn't even count all of our missionaries, right?
Right.
Over 600 missionaries in 84 countries. It's great to be able to bring these stories to all of our viewers and those that are listening through Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And so, again, thanks for joining us today. And let's just jump right in. Of course, you were in Romania here back 6-8 weeks ago. And so I know you got to visit with our missionary, Rika Gonchalia, and see their ministry. And, of course, you've been there multiple times. But you got to be there, got to visit with them. And then they're doing a lot of work with refugees. And so just kind of give us an update from your trip. Who did you meet? Where did you go? What did you do? All of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we all know the devastation of what's going on in Ukraine. Yeah. And it is, what we see in the news is terrible, but what I heard from people who left there, it's even worse than what we see, and the way that it's affected their lives and what they're going through, and having left family behind, and they don't even know if they're alive or not.
Yeah.
And so the opportunity came as a fellowship to work with some of our missionaries. Yeah. We have some that are working with refugees in Slovakia. Yeah. There's some that have made it all the way to Germany. Some of our missionaries are helping, even Portugal and a few other places. But one of the main places that we're able to have an impact is through the missionaries in Romania. Yeah. Of course, they border Romania. Yeah. And Rika Gonchalia, although his where he lives and his church is probably an 8-hour drive away from the border. Yeah. He's still very active and involved. And so I was able to go visit and just said, Rika, just show me how things have opened up for you and your churches to minister to the Ukraine refugees. And basically he said there's two ways. Number one is through refugees that have come to a center that they have working with MANA, and the other is opportunities to go across the border with other pastors. So. Yeah.
I tell you what, I just can't even imagine that, thinking about stories, and I have friends, of course, that's where I grew up, so I have friends over there, and I hear stories about refugees coming over and how they don't even know, if they have a home. Right. Some of them have tried to go back, some couldn't get there, some wanted to, but it's that struggle. But just, I can't even imagine living in that situation and then having just basically overnight, just everything torn away from you. Were you able to meet any of those refugees that they're working with there? And do you hear any stories of any of that from them?
Sure. Yeah, in fact, Rika works with Manna Worldwide, and Manna Worldwide has this orphanage they call the Father's House. And it's in a small town, Kumpalung, up in some mountain area. And so they have this center. Well, when the refugees started coming into Romania, the government started looking for places and organizations that could help them and take care of them. So this is a place that has been approved of by the Romanian government to be able to take and house refugees. And so they've had refugees that have come, and some have already left and moved on to other countries. But in this particular place, there's about 17, mainly mothers and their children. There's a couple men that have moved in there, and the idea is that we could even house more as they come. So, but I was able to go there and meet with them. Actually enjoyed just hanging around them. I rode bikes with their kids around the building.
I saw the video of that.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
And their kids, they love that. And then I paid for a meal. I said, I'd like you to cook as much as you can your own Ukrainian meal, food that you probably miss or you can't purchase or afford.
Yeah.
And so they love that, and
That's
it
cool.
was really great food. And of course, there was enough made that they could have it for a few days.
Oh, and I'm sure that meant the world to them.
It meant a lot to them.
That someone would care enough to be able to come in and say, hey, do something that you're used to, that you want, that you miss.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I love that you did that. So
that was really special as well.
Yeah.
And then to sit down with them and just hear some of their stories. Yeah. Of course, they one of them spoke a little bit of English, but most of them did not know English, so we had to use interpreter. In fact, they don't even speak Romanian, really.
Yeah. And there's a big difference between Ukrainian and Romanian.
And you would never really think of it that way,
right.
Bordering each other in Europe, but the languages are totally
completely different. Yeah.
And so even those refugees, we have, Rika has a church right there in that area.
Yeah.
And they go, but they don't understand most of it.
Yeah, sure.
But the purpose of housing them is not just to feed them and clothe them and take care of them, and even try and provide a little bit of education for the kids.
Yeah.
But the main purpose is then to share the gospel with them and lead them to Christ. So that's being worked on with them. But the language is a barrier that makes it difficult.
Yeah. Now, have any of them been in contact with anyone back in Ukraine? Have they been able to go back, or have they gotten word on anything that's going back in their hometowns?
Sure. They hear a little bit through different people that have come out.
Yeah.
They have their news there that they get word from. A number of them, their husbands are back there. Yeah. They're either fighting or they are in a security, trying to secure different companies.
Yeah.
So they've become security officers.
Yeah.
But when I was there at that time, they had got news that on that day, about 70 bombs had landed in their hometown, in their town.
Wow.
And
That's
many
crazy.
places destroyed.
Yeah.
We have a video that I've made available, and on the description of this podcast, you can see a link to go and watch this video. Yeah. But it tells a story of one of the ladies who shared that before the war started, they were a young married couple, and they had twins. And the twins were born, and so they wanted to move out of where they were to a nicer apartment for their kids. And so they put money down on this apartment and hoping to buy it and have a nice home for their kids. Well, since they've come out of Ukraine, that building has been bombed and destroyed.
Wow.
Well, they still have to pay the loan.
Yeah.
They have to pay the loan for nothing that's there.
Yeah.
And that just gives you a glimpse of what they're really dealing with.
Yeah, and
the death of family members.
Yeah, and it's not just that the apartment's not there now. That apartment, they're never going back to that.
Never going back.
They're never going to have an opportunity to go back to that. And so, just thinking through all of the financial and emotional and all the different aspects of that just negatively impact the people of Ukraine. And this is going on in other places around the world. We've seen it throughout the years, and this is not the only conflict around the world. But it took center stage earlier this year, and I was reading actually this morning. I got back on just to get some updated numbers. They say over 12 million Ukrainians have fled Ukraine since this all started back in February. I think the invasion was February 24th or something like that. And so over 12 million, and they have over close to 7 million that have gone through the borders of Romania, Poland. I think there's close to or over 1 million refugees right now in Romania by itself. And so it's just thinking about the complete devastation that's been caused.
Right.
But
and some of them have, when things died down just a little bit, when Russia pulled back for a little while, some of the Ukrainians went back in to see and they were there for a week or 2 weeks, and there was nothing to go back to.
Yeah.
And so they've come back out trying to find life.
Yeah, and
somewhere
trying to make it in a new location where they don't speak the language, and the languages aren't even close.
Yes.
And so trying to figure out all of that kind of thing. But, thinking about all of the devastation and all the problems that this has caused and refugees going out, one of the encouraging things is to see Ukrainians come to basically our doorstep,
right,
where we have missionaries. And so just talk about the importance of being able to take advantage of those opportunities in these countries for our missionaries.
Right. Well, when God allows things to happen in our world, a lot of times people are displaced.
Yeah.
And when they're displaced, they're out of their comfort zone, and they're in a place then where they are in a place of great need.
Yeah.
And as these people have come into Romania, they've come without anything, and they need. But our missionaries are helping them physically, but more importantly, spiritually. Yeah. That's the greatest need.
Yeah.
We can give them all the food and all the clothes and education, but if they die without Jesus, that means nothing.
It's all irrelevant.
And so our missionaries are taking this advantage of this, I guess, to be able to share the gospel. And so our churches in America, we have a fund in the mission office called the Ukrainian Refugee Fund. And if they want to give, this enables us to be able to provide for these families in order to help them physically, so that we can minister to them spiritually.
And I love that because they need everything.
Yeah.
They need clothes, they need food.
Toys for their
kids. I mean, they literally need everything every day. They have no way to work and make money. They are completely independent upon other countries and people in other countries.
Yes.
And so our churches that have given, we've been able to help with that. But there was also another cool opportunity that we had. So speak about that for a minute. Just I think we had something to do with the semi-truck.
Yes.
So,
Yes. I talked to Bruce O'Neill, and what are ways that we can partner together in helping with relief opportunities.
Yeah.
And so with Manna, we were able to send a 40-foot semi-truck full of supplies and Bibles.
Wow.
Into Kiev, however you want to say
it. Yeah, that's right.
The capital city.
Yeah.
And so that was a really neat opportunity to be a part of that. And I think we're going to be looking at doing more. But, that costs. And so as churches have given to us, we were able to say, hey, let's put this money towards sending in a huge truck full of supplies and Bibles into people. And so that was another area that we've been able to work with. And then Rika has met up with pastors, other Baptist pastors in Romania, who have been burdened to help the people on the other side of the border in Ukraine that have not been able to leave. Yeah. And so those pastors have joined up and met with Baptist pastors in the Ukraine, whose churches have been destroyed, but their people are still trying to survive. They've got several centers where refugees have gone to. Yeah. So Rika has joined up with these pastors, and I was able to go to Bucharest, the capital city, and meet with those pastors and just thank them for what they're doing, because they're putting a lot of their time and effort into this too. And in turn, they appreciated for all the assistance we've been giving from our churches through Rika to join up with them. So they drive twice a month, 8 hours or more. They'll take small trucks full of supplies that we've been able to help purchase and go across the border. Sometimes it takes 5 hours just to get across the border. But they have men in their church who have given up time from their work, so they don't get paid from their work so that they can drive these trucks. Sometimes it's 2-3 days at a time. Yeah. But they believe in helping these people so we can get the gospel to them.
Well, and I love that. It gives some context to this just a little bit. When we think 8 hours, we think, okay, 70 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour, whatever, going down the interstate for 8 hours, and we're there, and it's great. But no, in Romania, you're going through 2-lane roads with sheep running out in front of you. Yes. I mean, it's not an easy trek to the northern border where Ukraine's at. And so, and then when you think about these men taking off, these people taking off work, they don't make a lot of money in Romania.
Right.
So they're even sacrificing what little they do have.
Right.
And there's no way to really overstate that. I mean, they're walking away from money, which is really hard in Romania.
And they're not asking for compensation.
Yeah,
they're doing this, sacrificing even of things for their family.
Yes.
So that we can reach these other people.
So that we can reach people, and I love that, because at the end of the day, it's people wanting to meet physical needs.
Yeah.
But more importantly, using that as an opportunity to share Christ with people.
Right.
And that's the whole point.
Yes.
And I love that. Just as we get ready to kind of wrap things up, are there any other thoughts that you'd have about Romania? And I know it's not just Romania. You mentioned earlier we have missionaries in Germany and other places that are working with these refugees that have come in. But do you have any other thoughts? How can people watching this or listening to this on a podcast, how can they get involved? I know you mentioned the fund that we have here, but are there other things that you could think of, ways that you could encourage them to get involved?
Well, there's several ways. First of all, I think we can all pray.
Yes.
Let's pray for our missionaries, for these churches that are trying to minister. Pray for the funds, and then encourage people to still give toward it. It's not going to be a short process here.
Yeah.
It's not just a 1 month and we're done.
Yeah.
This could go on for a while. And until these refugees can be placed somewhere, in the future, without having to help them, but it's going to take some time, and more are coming. So financially, prayerfully can be involved. Perhaps even send some people over to help and be involved, and maybe taking up those supplies across the border. And so you got to be careful, though. There's sometimes bombing right on the border.
Yeah. Sure.
And things like that. So our the people there do take a lot of risk.
Yeah.
So pray for those. I would say, like our missionaries, Rika Gonchalia, his son Sammy, his daughter Becky, that are there serving, but the other pastors too.
Yeah.
Because they have their own flock, they have their own churches that they're overseeing, but they're trying to do what they can, and it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And so pray for the leaders that are there.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, hey, listen, I just want to say thank you for tuning in today. And as we're talking Ukraine and Romania and just the refugee crisis that's going on, and appreciate you tuning in. And you've just heard ways you can get involved: pray, give, go. We hear those three things all the time: pray, give, go. But that's the way that you can. Those are ways you can get involved right now in helping our missionaries connect with these Ukrainian refugees in a time of crisis in their life when they are open to the gospel. And I talked to Rika and them here a couple months ago, and I said, how can we communicate things to our churches? What can we have them pray for? And they said, you know what? We can pray for a lot of things, but just pray that they will be open to the gospel.
That's right.
And that's what we're praying. I want to encourage you to engage in that prayer as well. And then maybe God's calling you. We need more missionaries in Eastern Europe.
Amen.
And we don't, but the people of Ukraine, the people of Romania, the people of Poland, they need more missionaries to take the gospel and work with them. And so they can have the eternal hope that we have in Jesus Christ. And so I want to encourage you down that path. And again, we're still in Matthew 9:38, our 9:38 Project 938, 938 challenge. So set your alarms at 9:38 in the morning, 9:38 at night. And when that alarm goes off, pray that God would send more laborers into his harvest. And listen, click the link down in the description, and you can watch that video of Jon's trip over to Romania here from a couple of months ago. And outside of that, anything else that you'd say as we wrap up?
I think the challenge has been given.
Yeah.
And as you said, more missionaries. All around there is wide open to missionaries.
Yeah.
And I believe God's still calling. Yeah. We need to pray that people will answer that call.
Yeah, absolutely. Will you be that person? We're praying that God would call more. So, Amen. Hey, listen, have a great day, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see you right here next time on the 938 podcast.